What's up, Zox fam? We're back with some more Etheria Restart. Now, I want to get into this topic because I feel like this is actually really important. And a lot of players, I really just want to make sure that you guys have the tools necessary so that you can make better decisions for your progression and for your account. Now, one thing that we currently have going on right now is that Lelum sucks, right? And that's something that I feel like it is kind of like a mixed review, right? Like there's some players that's like, no, this character is great. There's some players that's like, no, this character's trash. And I want to talk about what it is that's actually happening and look at this from a much bigger scope, because this isn't the only time that this is going to happen, nor has it been the first, right? So let's actually dial back and talk about this a little bit, right? So before we dive into that, right? For those of you guys that have been here, we obviously have had situations like, for example, when Yelly released, there was this big thing when she first came out, Yelly's trash, right? No good, don't summon for. And then when people actually built her, they invested in her. Oh my God, she's God tier. She does everything. Now she is the best DPS in the game. And this has happened with a many of different units within the game. A lot of players were told not to summon Freya, and Freya ends up being like one of the most broken, like low investment, almost no investment characters in the game, right? And so you kind of see that there's this trend where there'll be emphases on characters that might seem like they're really OP and then being pushed or having players be pushed into summoning for them, or characters that are maybe a little bit better than what they may have seemed, and then people telling them not to summon for them. But then when they come into the game, they're actually really busted. And the thing is that like when it comes down to making decisions, a lot of it, and this is just for first and foremost, if you're free to play, you have to wait until testing is done, because I feel like the biggest thing that you're going to run into often is on paper, right? And granted, I am very clear myself when I talk about like on paper versus like actual application. I'm a big tester. And a lot of the times when someone asks me a question, I usually will say like, well, I can't really give you an answer on that because I need to personally test it. Now, I think again, for content's sake, when we make videos or when we talk about certain things, I'll say things like, well, on paper, this seems really good, or this seems really busted, but we still need to test, right? And the other thing I think that kind of goes with this, and the reason why the testing portion is so important before you make a decision, is because you don't know what the requirements are, right? And I think that some people look at the requirements as, I just need lattice, right? And so when they look at that as, oh, I just need lattice, I want to be a little bit more clear when I say full investment, right? When I say full investment, I'm meaning lattice, the actual gear you have to put on the character, maybe even certain stat requirements that you need to hit, right? Because it might not just be a matter of, oh, do you have Keen Eye and Fury and Swift Raid? Like it might be, well, you need to have 4K attack and you need to have 70% crit rate or whatever it may be as far as your generalized stat lines. So these are things that you have to take into consideration, because otherwise you're just going to always be making decisions that are going to bottleneck you and you're just not going to progress, right? So with that being said, right, we kind of like get that generalized idea is that everything first and foremost, especially if you're free to play, you have to wait until testing is done. If that means you have to wait a day, 2 days, maybe even 3, wait those days, because I'm telling you, it will be much more of a payoff, especially over time for those that aren't able to necessarily drop. Like for some people on this banner, if you think about it, what is that? 3K, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 20. Dude, like we're talking about almost 30,000 crystals that some people just dropped. Yeah, free to play just don't have 30K every time a LD banner comes around to just drop that. So you have to be more cautious, right? Now, the thing is that with the Lelum, I want to talk about this a little bit because I did summon her, right? But I just can't build her right now because I was focusing on some more efficient stuff. And I'm gonna talk about that in a second. But with this character, one thing I think that is like worth talking about is the investment, but the actual build. And I think that what we're looking at and what we're seeing is that, like, I've seen a lot of people say like, oh, this character's not that great. And, you know, I'm trying to get her to do this in PvE. There's some people that's like, oh, well, in PvE, she is like replicating characters like Hoyan for me, I just prefer to maybe still use Hoyan or whatever it may be. Or even when we're looking at PvP, there's a lot of players saying things like, Harvest isn't the build. You need to, or sorry, Momentum isn't the build. Harvest is, right? And that's the key information that you need to know before you decide whether or not you want to pick up a character or be able to build them. Because here's the thing, if most casuals, and this is what the general consensus is that I've been seeing from a lot of people, if you can't clear certain difficulties yet, and then you're talking about the ability to being able to build a character at full capacity to get the most out of them, you have to be aware of that first, right? So this is the next thing that you have to think about. Can I actually build this character? So there's the lattice investment portion, right? But then there's the gear portion. And I think that that's what a lot of players are running into as well, is that they don't actually have the gear to make a character work. And the other thing is too, with PvP games like this, there are going to be some characters where they literally need to have perfect DPS stats in order to work. And that's something that a lot of people, like, they forget that exists. And maybe just even are just ignorant to it because they just don't know. But I will tell you firsthand, from coming from games like Epic 7, coming from games like Summoners War, there are plenty of characters that literally need pristine stats in order for them to actually operate somewhat properly, or even just properly altogether. Specific set bonuses that are required, which even the Harvest makes sense, right? Because let's talk about what her kit is doing. She's doing damage to the target with more than 60% of their HP. What does Harvest do? Harvest, if we actually go and take a look, right? If we go over to, oh, wrong thing. We click over here and we go to Harvest, and we talk about what the value is of Harvest. Harvest is giving you an additional, okay, when you're attacking targets with HP that's above 50%, additionally ignore 30% of their defense. Now, the other thing is too, if we remember, this character is able to basically ignore shields and seal HP. So this is going to play hand in hand with a gimmick like her. Like, say, for example, putting her on Momentum. Momentum is going to be, and Momentum generally is good for PvE, but for some units, like in her case, that's maybe not going to give her all of the value that you really want to pull out of her in order for her to work. So it's like little things like that. Like, what is your capacity to be able to build, like maybe a Harvest Fury or even a Keen Eye, so that you can really pull out that segmented damage? Because that's the other thing, right? Like, we're talking about massive hits. So you're looking to try to push more segmented damage, and you want that to increase. So like, if we look at Fury or even the Keen Eye, right? Keen Eye is going to be giving you that first increase of 25%, and then Fury is actually probably a little bit more of a better reference here. But Fury is actually going to be providing that when you land a crit, the damage result of that hit increases by an additional 12%. And that's the overall damage, right? So these are the things that you have to kind of consider. Am I able to build this character? The next thing, because our game is unique, do I have the shell, right? Like, do I have the actual shell to make this character operate properly? And so, like, if you don't have those things that to actually make the character, or even the capacity to farm those, then that might be something that might be a telltale on, okay, either waiting for a character, or if you do pull the character, maybe just knowing like, hey, they're going to sit on the bench for a little bit and not even starting to invest. Because here's the biggest mistake that a lot of players will make. They will summon for a character. The character has a very, very high investment from gear to lattice. And because they are missing things, they'll start investing, but they don't realize that that character isn't really a middle ground character. And what I mean by that is that there are some characters where you can put a little bit of investment in them and they will still work or operate to some capacity decently. And then there's other characters that literally require full investment to be able to operate all together. So let's take, for example, a character that you can throw a little bit of investment and they still hit that middle ground and still work. Lelum, right? Like, this character like requires like almost slim to no investment. Trash speed gear works on her, just the skill 3 investment, and then 5-star minimum if you're looking for just making sure that she has enough speed and just the bulkiness to be able to take a hit. If you have the speeds, you can even run this character at 3-star where her skill 3 maxed out and have her in a Codex of Magic, and she works, right? So these are like the things that, like, when we're looking at investment costs and full building, there are going to be some decisions that you can make now, and there's going to be other decisions that you have to make a little bit later based off of those things. Same thing with like the Yelly Revelation build. If you're trying to go for like, say, like a Nuke Ramoka, depending on what it is that you're trying to do, some of these builds require different things. And so if you're not aware of that, or you don't have that prepared, it's just going to make it feel much worse when you have a character that you put some resources into, but they just sit there, right? And this is what I mean by sometimes it's just better to invest more into what you already have versus just trying to pull something and then it doesn't really actually give you any value in that given moment. Now, I'm not saying that Lelum is bad, because I don't actually believe that. I feel like she fits more into a more niche thing. And I feel like for what it really intended, she was a character that's implemented to counteract the meta that we currently have, right? I just think that like people are still going through that like mix of building and trying to figure things out. But I felt like while we're in that mix, I wanted to make this video to help those that are like struggling and there's the dopamine of pulling on the gacha versus like, am I really making a good decision or is this a terrible decision? Now, do I feel like this character is on par with like, let's say Yelly? I don't think she's going to give Yelly, but I also will say that I feel like she's still solid for those that are trying to build into counteracting some of the aspects in like within certain tiers in PvP or RTA. I just think that, again, there just needs to be more time so that more things can be showcased and combinations could be tested to be able to really see how this character operates. Now, again, whether or not her damage is lackluster or meets the expectation, that has been kind of on the fence for a lot of players. I'm going to have to test that out still personally, but I just wanted to kind of talk about this because, again, I got to shout out the world chat because I sat here, talked to a lot of people for a little bit. Samuel is another individual, another CC that I was sitting here, we were talking. It was just interesting to see the back and forth that players were having and how many players were actually like, dude, I went and I pulled and I regretted, or people that I was like, it's the CC's fault. And I'm like, wait a minute. I was telling you guys not to pull. And I even had people that were kind of arguing against it, like, nope, that's a must pull. But again, I think it's just really, really important, guys, that no matter what is being hyped up, you take it for a grain of salt until you visibly see things showcasing that character. Like I just released a video showing Nilu be a god and helping out, assisting, supporting, buffing the team. You have to wait for that, right? So that's going to be that. I'm really interested to see how you guys feel, about like a lot of things, because I think also too, like when you're trying to determine like with summoning and stuff like that, like a lot of it's also going to be a different experience based around like what elo you're playing in RTA, because lower elos versus higher elos are going to feel a lot different, right? Like, so somebody that's clearing like hells might be like, yo, she's OP. But if you're Inferno, she might not necessarily feel as great. Or if you're in like high elo and say like you're in Mythic, she might not be where you want her to be, versus like if you're in like Bronze, she's going to feel a little bit different, right? So there's just so much that kind of goes into that. But I just wanted to take the time to talk to you guys as a community about this and hear you guys' thoughts and opinions. Now, what I will say and what I plan on doing, if you guys give any feedback or have any responses on the comment section, I'm actually going to make a video going over some of those points and just sharing you guys' thoughts and opinions, man. So again, let's keep the conversation going. I appreciate you guys for tuning in. All you guys, stay blessed, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.